Hi, welcome to Hannity. As the Democrats are literally going over the cliff politically, they're destroying themselves. Never stop them. By the way, what we're seeing tonight is the culmination of the pathetic so-called resistance against President Trump. It is backfiring big time in the Washington swamp. Lawmakers are now set to vote on articles of impeachment. It is the last meaningless step in what has been just a baseless political smear against the president. 3 years, do nothing Democrats. The latest chapter in what has been a desperate, dishonest, nonstop effort, well, to undo a duly elected president and take the president down, impugn the will of his supporters, we the people. And like every other attempt to destroy President Trump, it is built on a pack of lies by a group of the most partisan hacks that can never be trusted. The individuals now advocating for this madness impeachment were the very same people pushing the Russia collusion hoax. They were wrong. 4 separate investigations, dead wrong. Mueller report, no collusion. And tonight, we're going to detail all of their lies, all of their corruption, all the individuals behind this. And we start with the hero of the deep state, the super patriot himself, who won't come on this program, Jim Comey. He's been lying, deceiving. He has formed the very basis of the Russia hoax. What we now know, everything we reported 2.5 years has been dead on accurate. In the fall of 2016, Comey signed off on the very first FISA warrant application against Trump campaign associate Carter Page. Remember, it's 1-step, 2-step. You get to Page, then you get into the Trump campaign transition, and as Attorney General Barr said, deep into the Trump presidency. He signed that application. He signed 3 of them ultimately. He swore that the material provided was true and accurate. On the top of a FISA application, it says verified. It was unverifiable. What he used, the overwhelming majority of information, was Hillary Clinton's dirty Russian dossier. And that was the first of many repulsive lies. The application, we now know, relied on a single source, secondhand information from Christopher Steele, being paid by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. And Comey's FISA application omitted what they knew, that Clinton paid for the material. Comey's FISA application also admitted that the material was not verified or corroborated. Well, Comey's FISA application also admitted Christopher Steele had a severe political bias against the president. There were numerous warnings he had not to use this information. And subsequent renewals submitted by Comey omitted that Steele's primary subsource, the only source, not even a source. Well, he described his own evidence as rumors, hearsay, speculation, a crude bar joke. And he also admitted that the subsource even questioned Steele's credibility. Wow. And he intentionally admitted that Steele doubted the credibility of his subsource. And get this, Comey's FISA renewals straight up lied about Carter Page and his connection to the CIA. And one of Comey's lawyers fraudulently changed the document to remove the fact that Page, was actually a source for the CIA and instead said he was not a source. But remember, Comey told us all that any claims of FISA abuse were just utter nonsense. This is a lie, what we're about to show you. Look.
I have total confidence that the FISA process was followed and that the entire case was handled in a thoughtful, responsible way by DOJ and the FBI. I think the notion that FISA was abused here is nonsense.
Nonsense. Yet another lie. Comey knew the dirty dossier was garbage. He knew it was full of unverifiable rumors and speculation. He was warned multiple times, and even Christopher Steele under oath. When he heard this, he should have gone back because the law requires this. He said, I have no idea if any of it's true. That's why he repeatedly denied that it was used as the bulk of information in the FISA applications. That we now know also is a lie. That means Nunes was right. That means the Grassley-Graham memo was right. And that means that the Schiff show, Adam Schiff, the congenital liar, lied repeatedly, too. Take a look.
You called the dossier unverified, salacious. Why did you use that to the FISA court to ask for surveillance for Carter Page? Not only use it, but you led with it. A bulk of that FISA application deals with that dossier. Why?
Yeah, that's not my recollection, Brett. And I don't know that the FISA application has been released. My recollection was it was part of
a broader mosaic of facts that were laid before the FISA judge to obtain a FISA warrant.
There was a lot more than the dossier in the FISA application?
My recollection was there was a significant amount of additional material about Page and why there was probable cause to believe he was an agent of a foreign power. And the dossier was part of that, but was not all of it or a critical part of it, to my recollection.
Wasn't a critical part. It basically was everything. Another lie. The Inspector General finding that the dirty dossier was the central and essential piece of the FISA application. But like any self-righteous habitual liar, Comey just can't come to terms with the truth. Watch this clip from over the weekend. Take a look.
You don't see a difference between it's part of a broader mosaic and it played an essential role in establishing probable cause?
It was one of a bunch of different facts that were assembled to apply to the court. It was the one that convinced the lawyers that they had enough now with that added to the pile to go forward.
Did you know that the FBI had talked to the Russian contact and he said what Steele said he had told him was not true? Did you know this? You're the FBI director.
First, again, the report will speak for itself. I don't believe the FBI concluded that Steele's reporting was bunk after talking to a subsource. Inspector General did not find misconduct by any FBI people. He found mistakes and negligent and oversight.
No, that's not true. In the case of Kevin Kleinsmith, he has referred it for a criminal investigation.
Right, but that's not been resolved. This business with the lawyer changing some email to a partner on the team.
Now, in case you're wondering, Comey is not having a psychotic break from reality. He's just lying like he usually does through his teeth. And as Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett pointed out in his bestseller Witch Hunt, these lies are just the tip of the iceberg. First, as FBI director, look at this. Comey repeatedly reassured Donald Trump that he was not a suspect in the counter-intel investigation of Russia. A lie. Remember in the spring of 2018, Comey claimed he still had no idea who funded Steele's dossier. Lie. Before he was ultimately fired, Comey told the president he doesn't leak and he doesn't do weasel moves. That was a lie, too. In fact, Comey leaked government memos detailing meetings and conversations with the President of the United States. And Special Counsel Horowitz, well, in this case, the Inspector General, referred him to the DOJ, remember, for criminal prosecution over leaking and lack of candor. Make no mistake, there is a very real human cost to all of these lies. This is the premier law enforcement agency in the entire world. This entire Russia witch hunt that put this country through nearly 3 years of hell. Carter Page's reputation utterly destroyed, illegally spied on, his civil liberties violated, his civil rights, they didn't exist, constitutional rights non-existent. Op-ed by law professor Jonathan Turley, An Apology to Carter Page, details the reckless, nonstop smear of a private citizen, all because of Comey's fraudulent FISA application. And let's not forget about Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. How could we forget what Comey did to a 33-year veteran? And as a part of Comey's deceitful investigation into all things Trump, what did he do? He brags. Remember, first it was Andrew McCabe saying, oh, no, you don't need a lawyer. But he brags, James Comey brags, he sets up an American war hero. Oh, I'd never do this or try this in the Bush or Obama years. No, I wouldn't even dare do that. Watch this.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine two FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
Oh, I wouldn't do this in these other administrations. Is this the higher loyalty that you claim to possess, Jim? Because is that how you treat a 33-year veteran of this country? Served in combat, Jim. Now, that just shows you to be so deceptive, narcissistic, and, yeah, you're a liar. Don't forget Jim Comey also signs the first FISA application, verified, October 2016, goes to Trump Tower 2017. Oh, it's salacious but unverified, President-elect. Lie again. Then he signs 2 more FISA applications, verified. He lies. And the great irony of all of this It was Lieutenant General Flynn, not Comey, who now faces years behind bars for lying when the FBI didn't even think he was lying. But they were going after his kid, and he was bankrupt. Oh, let's see, you're going to prosecute my son, or I fall on the sword. I'm shocked at General Flynn's decision. Without a doubt, Comey played a central role in what is the weaponization of these most powerful tools that we entrust to our government. And they turned them against we, the people. And he didn't act alone. Let's see what former CIA Director John Brennan, another notorious liar, let's see what role he's played in all of this. I can't wait to get to the bottom of that. And according to multiple sources, he strongly advocated for Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for dirty dossier to be included in the official U.S. intel assessment. Time will tell. The Inspector General Horowitz confirmed this fact in his report because in 2017, we do know this. Brennan clearly lied to Congress when he said the exact opposite. Take a look.
Do you know if the Bureau ever relied on the Steele dossier as part of any court filings, applications, petitions, pleadings?
I have no awareness.
Did the CIA rely on it?
No.
Why not?
Because we didn't. It wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. It was not.
Just wondering what Prosecutor Durham, Attorney General Barr, they seem to know an awful lot about this that we will learn in the days and weeks ahead. Remember, this is the same former CIA director used his important status to push baseless, harmful conspiracy theories against the President of the United States repeatedly. Take a look.
I think he's afraid of the president of Russia. Why? Well, I think one can speculate as to why. That the Russians may have something on him personally that they could always roll out and make his life more difficult. Clearly, I think it's important for us to be able to improve relations with Russia. But the fact that he has had this fawning attitude toward Mr. Putin has not said anything negative about him. I think continues to say to me that he does have something to fear.
Lies, deceptions, hoax, conspiracy theories, rumors, speculation, conjecture. Two of America's most powerful bureaucrats abused their power. They spread false information. They tried to undo a presidential election, and they got caught.